Welcome back to another Spirit Island video. In this video, we're going to be covering the Apocrypha spirit that was covered in yesterday's stream. Now, there is one other Apocrypha spirit, and that is Spreading Rot. So if you guys are aware, there are these spirits that Eric and the developers make, and they're non-canon spirits. Honestly, they're more custom spirits, if anything. There's very little playtesting that goes into them. And more of it, they're just trying to create a fun and interesting concept with a theme behind it. Now, this is the second Apocrypha spirit. The first one was made with or in conjunction with the fans. This one was made as a gesture to the European fans that were coping with shipping delays on the Nature Incarnate expansion. So they made this the spirit. This is actually how the spirit boards look during playtesting. There's no artwork. But we were told that this spirit is supposed to represent a dragon. And the whole point of this spirit is you're going to be essentially collecting resources, and then those resources are going to upgrade your spirit. So let's take a look. You are an incarnate spirit, and this is the scale. Oh, and I do apologize for the quality. This is something that was made by one of the players in my group. So I believe they'll eventually come out with a version that is more easier to view eventually. But yeah, this is just kind of a lot of screenshots. So okay, so you have an incarna. It is a scale, and you have a layer marker. Important to point out, the layer marker is not a presence; it is a marker. So you get to choose either a mountain or a land with blight to put these in. You then have 13 presence discs that are going to be on your board. This is actually really interesting. You are the first spirit in the entire game that has 13 presence on your spirit board. Every other spirit has less than that. For instance, Teeth starts with 1 presence on the board, just like you, but it has 12 on the tracks. So let's keep looking. You then can set aside metal tokens, and we have a new symbol for that. You're going to have 4 uniques, and you start at 0 energy. It is a very high complex spirit, lots of offense, control, fear, low defense, and a decent amount of utility. Flipping the spirit board over, we have 3 special rules. The first special rule, it's called predatory roaming, and it says you have an incarna, and then it says whenever you target a land with a power, you may push the incarna towards or into that land. This can enable range targeting restrictions. Once per turn, you may add or move the incarnate directly to the layer. So this top part, it's essentially Shroud's special rule. Mists, shift and flow. Very, very similar to it. It's not exactly, because you can't move into adjacent lands, but very, very similar. And it's also like Behemoths, where you can just instantly teleport the incarnate. In this case, you have to teleport it to a sacred site. For Covets, you have to teleport to the layer. So now we have the second special rule. It says always seeking metal. It says your powers can find metal, choose a building without metal, and attach 1 metal for a town or 2 metal for a city. When that invader is destroyed, removed, or pushed, but not gathered or replaced, or otherwise moved, it drops its metal, leaving it unattached. So this is how you can, I guess, make use or create metal. So metal has to go to buildings, and then once those buildings get disrupted, you can then pick up that metal. So it says at the incarna, each dropped metal is attached to the incarna. When attached metal is at the layer, you get to store it. So essentially, you're collecting this resource. I kind of imagine this is like a this is kind of like a RTS game, right? Where you have your worker that's going around, it's collecting the resource and then bringing it back. And once you cash it in, that's when you get the value. Once again, this is also this is all just like random screenshots and custom made stuff. This should not say a sacred site, so don't get confused by my sacred site marker here. Okay. So that is everything about the metal. So let's look at the tracks as well as the growth options. We are a 0 to 1, so you have a presence. You have your first growth option that does not place presence, a 2 presence placement option, and then a 3rd presence placement option that gives you some goodies, so energy and cards. The first growth option allows you to move that incarna, so hopefully like you're slithering around and you also can gain power cards. Your tracks are really interesting, and they kind of remind me of Finder. So you could either choose to go top or bottom, and then when you reach these points, you can either choose to go above or you can go below. So for instance, if I'm going top track, I would go here, then here, and then here. I can also choose to go back. Now you don't unlock both of these when you pass through. It's only a single presence. And you have a ton of freaking elements on the tracks. This is very common. At least when we did our initial playtesting, a lot of spirits they throw a lot of marker or a lot of elements on there, and then eventually stuff gets toned back. 5 energy in 3 plays. This is really interesting. We don't have many spirits with 3 plays. As we know, 4 plays is the golden number for spirits. 5 tends to be excessive or tends to be too strong, and then 3 tends to be too weak, or at least very rarely can you make 3 plays work. Some examples would be like Downpour or Fractured, where they kind of have 3 plays in quotations, but there's ways around it. Yeah, so this will be interesting to see how this plays. You then have this innate power, and it says Scent of Shining Earth. It's a fast power, 1 range, target a building that does not have metal. And essentially, you have just different tiers that this whole innate is basically saying you could add metal to buildings. That's it. So you have ways to make it slow. You can improve the targeting. You can add an extra metal, or you can repeat it. So this is playing into that metal mechanic. Okay, so let's look at our power cards, and this is what's really exciting. Let's start off with the first one, and it is Melt Earth to Slag. It is 2 energy slow, Sun, Fire, Earth. 1 range. It says 1 fear, 1 damage, and then for each invader with metal, 1 damage. So it's a damage scaling power. It does cost 2 energy, which I believe is going to be very challenging for the spirit. Your energy economy seems extremely tight. So, but it is a way to do a ton of damage. We have Favors of Steel and Blown. It is a 1 energy Sun Earth animal. 2 range, targeting a land that has Dahan as well as metal. 1 fear if invaders are present, and then for each metal and target land, 1 Dahan cannot be damaged or destroyed. After the invader phase, for each dropped metal, move 1 Dahan to the Incarna. They each bring a dropped metal. This this is a card. It's very reminiscent of Stone's Unyielding Defiance, Stubborn Solidity, which is one of the best uniques in the entire game. Stubborn, which is defend 1 per Dahan, and then Dahan are basically immortal. This is a very, I would say, fair version of the card. If anything, this card is actually pretty weak, because you're paying 1 energy to still blight the land, and the amount of Dahan that are being protected scales with metal, and based on how I've watched the spirit play and how I've played the spirit, this tends to be a very challenging thing to set up. At least in the early game, of course. Once you reach that mid game, you'll definitely be able to set this up easier. But because you're still blighting, it's not actually solving the land, and you have so few card plays. This card just does not scream good. I mean, it's at least balanced, right? I mean, Stubborn is on the stronger end. I think this is opposite. I think this is definitely on the more weaker end of the spectrum. You have Unnerving Attention. 1 energy slow is an air earth animal. It says 1 fear if any invader has metal, and then you can push a explorer or town, and a Dahan. So these 3 cards, kind of uninteresting. They don't excite me, but there is one card in the kit that does, and that is Petition for Smoldering Wrath. It's a 1 energy fast, Moon, Fire, Air, Earth. Target any spirit. Target spirit may pay you up to 3 energy. For each energy paid, they choose a different option. They gain a card, they may play that card, and they can make that card fast. Well, I should not say that card. You can play a minor card. It doesn't have to be the one you gained, but it cannot be a unique. And then you can make any minor fast. And what's really cool is when they're paying this, the energy is going to the spirit. It's going to Covets. And yeah, this is a very, very cool card. It kind of reminds me of like a multiple version of Serpent's uniques. Let's see. Where you have Gift of Flowing Power, gaining energy and getting to get a spur, as well as Primordial Deeps being able to gain a power card. So flowing power lets you play the card. Primordial Deeps lets you gain a card. So it's kind of like a hybrid, but then you're also gaining energy, or that spirit is giving you energy. Very, very cool. So we talked a lot about the base kit of the spirit, and you're going to notice that something is off. And this is actually what I noticed when I was watching the stream. You have this metal mechanic, but really it's not used much at all. You have two cards that really utilize metal, and it's not, you have tons of text that talks about metal, but only two cards use it. Well, that is because there's another board. And this is your Horde board. So special rules, it says a horde of pillaged spoils. You may use metal your Incarna brought to the lair to store treasure in your horde. Pay the listed metal cost, then discard the top minor power and place a treasure marker on a space marked with an element matching that card. You gain the benefit. You gain the ongoing benefit. Alternatively, put the marker in the coin pile and gain a permanent element matching that card. Okay, so what does this mean? So you're generating metal from this. Metal goes to buildings. You then can push the buildings, destroy the buildings, and that can drop the metal. You then pick up the metal with your Incarna. You then bring that metal back to here, to your lair, and then it gets stored on here. And then as you tick up along the right, you basically spend that metal to unlock different options up here. So it's kind of like a Starlight-esque type of spirit. Or you can, instead of unlocking options, you can gain permanent elements. And whenever you do that, there's this random mechanic where a random card will come down and you'll get one of the elements off that card. So for instance, let's say I have one metal here. I'm going to flip the top minor card of the deck, and then I can either get a sun, fire, or water element permanently, or I can unlock the sun, water, or fire ability. Well, so the innates or like the passive upgrade. I actually really like this. It's very cool, very unique. Like I said, it's very Starlight-esque. So let's look at the type of unlocks that you can get. So the plant and the moon, these modify your growth options. So your growth 2 gains +1 energy, and your growth 3 gains +1 energy. Consensus among my group is that these two are bad. These are your traps, and I think you should probably stay away from these options. I think we thought maybe your moon might be kind of decent because your G3 seems pretty solid. Like when I say decent, as in decent, like the very first or like turn 1 or turn 2. But this is also, we haven't played the spirit that much, but that's just our initial thoughts towards it. You then have the animal. It says your damage dealing powers originating at the Incarnate deal +1 damage. You have your water, which says your push or gather, or no, your push, not gather, at the Incarna can now move cities. And they also can generate a fear. So for instance, if you have a push 1 explorer or 1 town, then you can instead push a city and generate fear, which is pretty insane that you can move cities like that. You have this earth, which says up to 1 invader and 1 explorer at the Incarna do not participate in ravages. I really like that. You then have a fire, air, and water. These are different innates. Your fire is damage. Your air, or not, you have a fire, air, and sun, not water. Your fire deals damage. Your air pushes, and your sun looks like it finds more metal. Generates fear. It's kind of a bit of everything. Very reminiscent of sun on Starlight, where it's like a fear, energy, and reclaim. Okay, so we played the spirit a couple times, and it is very different and it's very interesting in terms of what it's doing. We've enjoyed the games just because they are very, it's unique. There's nothing like this spirit at this time. The idea behind this spirit is to have a very weak early game and have a stronger late game, kind of reminiscent of a spirit like Wounded Waters Bleeding, right? Where you're wounded to start the game, and as the game goes on, you get progressively stronger. And feels like that, except it's not as like flip the switch like it is with Wounded, where like turn 3 and turn 5, you're just this absolute monster. It definitely takes longer, at least in our games. As for the power of this spirit, it's tough to say. I've gotten my butt kicked, and I've watched people get their butt kicked into high diff adversaries. We've played a bunch of level sixes. We've played some Prussia, France, Sweden. I just played England and just died. Um, if I were to give an initial rating on the spirit in terms of its power, it's probably around D tier, maybe even lower. Um, I don't see this being higher than the bottom of B tier. I think it's definitely a spirit that is going to perform better in combos because of petition seems like a very interesting card. You combo this petition card with a spirit like serpent, or maybe a spirit like relentless gaze. Those spirits that are locked on low number of cards, I think, are really gonna love this card. Um, but overall, it just currently has a lot of problems into a lot of the adversary matchups. It isn't doing enough in the early game. Like it's not able to maintain tempo. That's probably a good way to phrase it. A lot of adversaries are so aggressive early on, and you really don't get your game going until turn 3-ish. And by then, you're just so far behind because your actions aren't doing anything. You kind of just fizzle out and die. Um, but overall, I think this is a very good start to the spirit. It'll be interesting to see what changes come about this spirit, and or if there's changes. I don't know if the devs plan on doing any other alterations to it, because I know it does take dev time, and maybe they're working on other projects, and also we have lives to live, so I don't know if they want to pour more effort into this. But I am excited that we did get a spirit like this. I don't expect to play this spirit at all on my channel. It is not my style. Even if I thought it was a stronger spirit, it's not the style of spirit that I like to play. I tend to like earthy plant spirits that are very, or animal spirits that rely on defense, and this is a spirit that does has no defense. There's nothing defensive about it. But if you like this video, like and subscribe. I will see you guys in the next video.